The space near the star called Vega was quiet and empty, or so it seemed. The rules of this part of the galaxy were set long ago by those who watched from the shadows. This was the domain of the Galactic Council. An alliance of many advanced species, they had a very careful system. When a new species learned to travel between stars, the Council would watch. They used hidden posts and silent probes. They studied the new species for many years. They decided if the species was ready to join the galactic community. The most important rule was this: the new species must never know they were being watched. On one such hidden post, floating in the dark, two figures monitored their screens. The post was small, clean, and very quiet. The air smelled of recycled chemicals. Elder Clarn, an insectoid being with wise old eyes, reviewed the latest reports. His long fingers tapped on the glass of a data screen. The report was about species 8897, from the third planet of a yellow star called Sol. The Council's name for them was Human. "The assessment is nearly complete," Clarn said, his voice a soft click. "The species shows high creativity and social complexity, but they are also very violent. They have had warp drive capability for only 1.7 standard cycles. That is a very short time. Their threat level remains classified as minimal." Across the room, Chancellor Mvel ruffled his sleek, feathered neck. He was an avian species, proud and impatient. Minimal? They split their own atom before they left their atmosphere. They fight over invisible lines on maps. They are chaotic children playing with fire. "And that is precisely why we watch," Clarn replied calmly. "To see if they will burn themselves out or learn to control the flame. Our final categorization is pending. They are on the cusp of being labeled guardianship required. We would guide them slowly over centuries." A new alert flashed on the main screen. It was an automated signal from the Sol System monitor. "Interesting," Clarn murmured. "The humans have launched a new vessel, their largest one yet." A schematic appeared. It was a massive, blocky ship. The design was simple, not elegant like council ships. It had thick hulls and many blocky sections. The humans called it the Choreo. Their data called it a Titan-class long-range exploration and colony vessel. Vel let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "A colony ship. Look at it. It is a giant brick. They use primitive reaction drives for in-system movement. Their power signature is crude. They probably stuffed it full of simple plants and hopeful families. It is adorable. And slow." "Do not be so quick to judge," Clarn said, though he also saw a simple ship. "Its size alone is notable. It shows great collective effort." "Effort wasted," Vel said, waving a clawed hand. "They are heading out past their own system's edge. They will probably get lost. Or their primitive warp coil will fail. Standard procedure: dispatch a Class 2 stealth probe. Follow it, observe, and gather final behavioral data for the categorization report." Clarn nodded. It was the standard protocol. The probe would be invisible to human sensors. It would fly near the ship, scan its interior, listen to communications, and see how the humans behaved when they thought they were alone. This data was crucial. It would decide if humanity would be contacted in 100 years, or 500, or never. With a silent command, a small, shimmering object was launched from the hidden post. It was shaped like a smooth disk. It slipped into a warp bubble and disappeared. A moment later, it reappeared, unseen, a few hundred kilometers from the human vessel. The probe began its work. It scanned the outer hull. It listened. It watched. On the post screens, data streamed in. Life signs, many, thousands. Power output, moderate, consistent with a generational ship. Communications, internal chatter about system checks, water recycling, and hydroponic yields. It was exactly what they expected. A peaceful, if ambitious, mission. "You see," Vel said, leaning back. "They are talking about soil quality and oxygen levels. They are farmers in a can. There is no threat here. Just a young species taking its first clumsy steps. We will recommend guardianship. In a few generations, we might even say hello." Clarn watched the data. Part of him hoped Mvel was right. A gentler first contact was always better. But something about the ship's design bothered him. It was so heavy, so solid. Why build something so strong just to carry plants? He pushed the thought away. He was being overly cautious. The probe's full deep scan would be complete soon, and it would confirm everything. The probe is initiating the final deep structural scan, Clarn announced. This will tell us everything about their materials and reactor core. Then we can finalize our report and go home. The probe pulsed once, sending a powerful, penetrating scan beam towards the choreo. It was a scan that no human technology should be able to detect. It was the Council's last, unseen look before making their judgment on an entire species. The beam reached out through the dark, touching the hull of the giant human ship. The post waited for the data to return. The bridge of the choreo was quiet and calm. The main lights were soft. Captain Lee Ji-hun sat in his chair, reading a report on his tablet. It was about the potato harvest in Biome Section 4. The yield was good. He allowed himself a small smile. Keeping thousands of people fed and healthy on a deep space mission was his main job. The ship was not just a ship. It was a floating piece of Earth. His piece. At the helm, Navigator Kwon Jun hummed a quiet tune. His eyes moved over the steady, green lines on his screen. Everything was normal. The stars outside the main window were steady, unmoving points of light. They were in the calm between systems. Space was vast and empty here. Commander Park Soo-min walked over and stood next to Ji-hun. "The last drill went well, Captain," she said. "The fire response teams are getting faster." Ji-hun nodded. Soo-min was always thinking about safety, about problems. That was why she was his first officer. He thought about the future, about life. She thought about the things that could go wrong. "Good," he said. "Let's hope they never need to be that fast." He looked at the main screen, showing a view of space ahead. "It's peaceful out here." In the science lab, Dr. Kim Tae-shik was teaching a small group. He pointed to a complex diagram on a screen. "This," he said, his voice tired but passionate, "is the Drake equation. It is an old idea from Earth. It tries to guess how many alien civilizations might be out there. For my whole life it has just been math. Numbers on a screen. But we are out here now. We might be the ones who finally find another answer." The young students listened, their faces full of hope. Tae-shik's own hope was quieter, hidden under years of disappointment. But it was still there. The peace was broken by a gentle beep, not an alarm. It came from Kwon Jun's station. He leaned forward, his tune stopping. "Captain," he said, his voice curious, not worried. "I'm picking up a tiny gravitational anomaly. Very close. It's like a small ripple. Right next to us." Ji-hun put his tablet down. "A ripple? From what? A small piece of rock we missed." "No, sir," Jun said, his fingers moving quickly. "It's too perfect. And it's moving. It's on a parallel course with us, matching our speed." Soo-min was already at her own station, her face serious. "No radar contact. No thermal signature. But the gravimetric sensor is very sure. Something is there. About 200 kilometers off our port side." She looked at Ji-hun. "It shouldn't be there." "Go to yellow alert," Ji-hun said, his voice even. "No loud noises. Just light up the boards. I don't want to scare people." Soft yellow lights glowed around the bridge. The mood changed from calm to careful watchfulness. "Should I try to hail it?" asked the communications officer. "Not yet," Ji-hun said. "If it wanted to talk, it would be talking. If it's hiding, let's not tell it we can almost see it." "Jun, can you get a better look?" "Trying a focus scan, Captain," Jun said. He sent a tight beam of active sensors towards the anomaly. At that exact moment, the Council probe had a problem. Its primary power cell, which had run flawlessly for 100 years, chose this moment to fail. The malfunction was sudden and violent. The systems that kept it hidden flickered and died. For a fraction of a second, the probe's warp stabilizer overloaded. On the bridge of the choreo, the sensors saw it happen. One moment, there was nothing. The next moment, a small, disc-shaped object of shimmering silver metal appeared out of nowhere. It was tumbling, little sparks of blue energy crackling around it. It was on a collision course. Object decloaked. June shouted. It's tumbling. Impact in 3 seconds. Sumin's hand flew to the shield controls. But she was too late for a manual adjustment. The ship's automatic systems were faster. Layers of energy, designed to stop micrometeoroids traveling at incredible speeds, pulsed to life around the Koryo. They were not even their main shields. They were like a soft, strong bubble. The tumbling probe hit the outermost layer. There was no sound. On the bridge, they felt the smallest vibration, like a single pebble had been thrown against a very thick window. On the screen, they saw a brief, bright flash of light. The silver disc shattered into 1,000 harmless pieces. The pieces bounced off the next energy layer and floated away, glittering in the starlight for a moment before drifting into the dark. Silence filled the bridge. It lasted for 5 seconds. "Report," Ji-hun said, his voice still calm. "No damage," Sumin said, looking at her screens. "None." The particle screen dissipated the impact energy. "Hull integrity is 100%. "What was that?" one of the junior officers whispered. Ji-hun stood up. He walked to the main window and looked out where the flash had been. "That," he said, "was not a rock." He turned back to his crew. "Someone was watching us, and their watch just broke against our window." He walked back to his chair. His mind was working quickly. This was not an attack. It was an accident. But it was a very important accident. Sumin, deploy a dozen repair drones. Have them collect every piece of that thing they can find. I want it in the analysis lab in an hour. "Yes, Captain." June, full sensor sweep of the area. Look for any other ripples, any other hidden friends. And I want a scan of the path that object came from. Where did it come from? On it, Captain.
Ji-hun sat down.
The report about potatoes was forgotten. Dr. Kim Tae-shik's equation was no longer just math. Someone else was out here. They had been hiding. And humanity's first introduction to them was not a hello. It was the sound of their own technology breaking against the side of a ship they thought was simple. A ship called the Koryo. The data hit the Galactic Council's hidden post like a physical shockwave. The final, frantic transmission from the doomed probe was not a routine scan report. It was a screaming burst of raw, terrifying information, sent just microseconds before the collision. Elder Klarn watched the numbers stream across the main screen. His compound eyes, capable of seeing 100 data points at once, could not process what they were showing. The calm, clicking sounds he usually made stopped completely. Next to him, Chancellor Mvel was silent for the first time. His proud feathers lay flat against his neck. "Retune the receivers," Mvel finally hissed. "This is corrupted data. A malfunction." "It is not corrupted," Klarn said, his voice barely a whisper. He pointed a trembling finger at the key metric. "The power signature. Read it." The number was impossible. The probe's deep scan had managed to pierce the outer layers of the human vessel before being destroyed. It had not found a simple fusion reactor. It had found a power core whose energy output matched that of a medium-sized stable star. It was contained within a magnetic bottle of a design the Council science had never even theorized. They tap into the fabric of subspace itself," Klarn said, reading more of the data. "Not for warp travel. For baseline power. This is not a reactor. It is a captured singularity. A tiny, artificial star heart." Mvel slammed a clawed fist on the console. "A colony ship does not need a star for power. It is a warship." "They lied." "Did they?" Klarn asked, pulling up the scan of the hull. "Look at the composition. Our sensors indicate a base of titanium and steel. But the molecular bonds, they are reinforced with woven carbon strands at a quantum level. The density is off the scale. A hull this strong is not for meteoroids. It is for withstanding what? What do they expect to meet?" The horror deepened. The probe's last glimpse of the ship's interior showed not just gardens and living quarters. It showed layers of armor plating 10 meters thick between sections. It showed enormous, shielded bays whose contents were unreadable, but whose shapes suggested machinery of immense scale. It showed energy conduits as wide as council ships running through the spine of the vessel. But the final, most chilling piece of data was not about weapons or armor. It was about the shield that had so casually vaporized the probe. The impact analysis, Clarn said, pulling up the graphic. A shimmering, multi-layered energy field diagram appeared. They have not one shield, but 7. Layered. The first layer, the one that destroyed our probe, is a passive particle screen. It is always on. It requires no active power from the main core. It is like a wall of solid force that just exists around them. Vel stared. A passive shield of that strength was a technology of myth. It was something only the oldest, most advanced species in the core worlds were rumored to possess. And these humans, these children, had it wrapped around their first big ship. Their weapon ports? Vel asked, his voice weak. That is the most confusing part, Clarn admitted, switching views. We see emitter arrays, but their design is unfamiliar. They are not focused energy projectors like ours. They seem to be kinetic launch systems. But the scale is all wrong. The barrels are too wide. The power feeds are too large. What are they throwing that requires so much power? The reality settled over the observation post. The quiet, careful world of the Galactic Council, built on protocols and controlled introductions, was shattered. They had not found a young species to guide. They had stumbled upon a sleeping giant, wrapped in armor they could not understand, powered by a star. All our assessments, Clarn said, his old body slumping. Minimal threat. Guardianship required. We were not watching a child. We were watching a titan. And we just threw a pebble at its eye. Vel's fear began to twist into a desperate anger. This could not be. It upset the natural order. The council was the advanced power. They held the knowledge. Their reaction. What was their reaction to the probe? Clarn reviewed the communication intercepts from the moments after the impact. He listened to the translated human speech. No damage. None. Deploy repair drones. Collect every piece. Where did it come from? The humans were not panicking. They were not shouting. They were calm, curious. They were treating the destruction of advanced council technology like a minor traffic accident. They were picking up the pieces to study. They are not afraid, Clarn observed, a new dread forming. They see us as a curiosity, puzzle, not a threat. That ends now, Vel shrieked, his pride burning through his fear. We cannot let this stand. A species with this power, loose in the galaxy with no understanding of our laws? It is chaos. We must make contact. We must establish dominance immediately. We must show them the proper order of things. Vel, no. This is not a first contact for a primitive species. This is a diplomatic meeting with a peer, possibly a superior. We must be cautious. Cautious. Vel pointed a shaking claw at the screen, at the terrifying schematic of the human ship. We trembled before their warship. Clarn, the council does not tremble. We will send the light of guidance. Our most impressive cruiser. We will meet them openly with strength and authority. We will bring them into the fold on our terms. Clarn knew it was a mistake. He saw the truth in the data. This was not about authority. This was about understanding a completely new kind of mind. A mind that built a mountain and called it a home. But Vel was already sending the orders. The die was cast. As the sleek, beautiful form of the Council cruiser light of guidance powered up its drives, Clarn looked back at the data, at the image of the blocky, monstrous human vessel. The humans had asked a simple question after the collision. Where did it come from? Soon, Clarn thought with a heavy heart, they would have their answer. And he feared what would happen when the galaxy's proudest diplomats met a species that built its homes out of fortress walls. On the bridge of the Koryo, the mood was one of focused calm. The debris from the strange object had been collected. Dr. Kim Tae-shik was in his lab, examining the shimmering pieces with a look of pure wonder. Captain Lee Ji-hun waited. He knew that whatever had sent that probe would not just go away. They had been seen. New contact, Navigator Quan Jun said, his voice sharp. A single vessel, emerging from a warp point directly ahead. It's holding position. On the main screen, a ship appeared. It was nothing like the blocky, functional choreo. This ship was all flowing lines and gentle curves. It seemed to be made of crystal and pale blue light. It was beautiful. It looked delicate, like a piece of fine glass art. It was also much, much smaller than the choreo. To the humans, it looked like a lifeboat floating next to an ocean liner. Commander Park Soo-min instantly had her tactical screen active. Power output is low, very low compared to ours. But their energy signature is clean, advanced. I am reading multiple focused energy projectors along their hull. Small caliber. Their weapon ports are active, Captain. Ji-hun absorbed this. A beautiful ship. Weapons hot. A statement. Their shields. Active. A standard single-layer energy barrier. Robust for a ship that size. But she didn't finish. Compared to the choreo's layers, it was like paper next to steel. Open a hailing frequency on all common bands, Ji-hun ordered. Ambassador Valeria to the bridge, please. As the Earth diplomat hurried in, looking both nervous and excited, the main screen flickered. The image of the alien bridge appeared. It was smooth and bright. In the center stood a tall, avian creature with sleek feathers and sharp eyes. It was Chancellor Mvel. Next to him, partly visible, was the older, insectoid form of Elder Klarn. Mvel drew himself up, his feathers fluffing slightly to make him look bigger. He spoke, and a computer voice translated his words into Korean and English. Unknown vessel. This is Chancellor Mvel of the Galactic Council Cruiser Light of Guidance. You have entered monitored space. You have also destroyed a Council observation probe. Explain yourselves. Ji-hun felt Soo-min tense beside him. He remained still. Chancellor Mvel. I am Captain Lee Ji-hun of the United Earth Vessel Choreo. The destruction of your probe was an accident. It decloaked and collided with our vessel's external safety screens. We meant no harm. We are on a mission of exploration and peaceful colonization. On the screen, Mvel seemed to blink. The translation was direct. There was no apology. Just a simple statement of fact. It unsettled him. Your vessel's profile does not match peaceful parameters, Mvel stated, his translated voice haughty. Its power signature is extreme. Its mass is excessive. The Galactic Council must ensure galactic stability. We require a full scan of your vessel to confirm your intentions. You will lower your shields and permit a boarding party. A murmur went through the choreo's bridge. Ambassador Valeria stepped forward, her diplomatic smile tight. Chancellor, surely there is a protocol for first contact? We are eager to establish peaceful relations. Your eagerness is noted, Mvel interrupted. Compliance is required. Ji-hun saw Soo-min's hand hovering over the tactical panel. He gave a tiny, almost invisible shake of his head. He looked back at the screen, his face calm but firm. Chancellor Mvel, Ji-hun said, his voice even. We welcome contact. We do not welcome demands. The choreo is a home to 10,000 souls. We cannot compromise its safety. We will not lower our shields. However, we are happy to exchange diplomatic envoys via shuttle. Or, you are welcome to send your scan data requests, and we will see what we can share. The difference in their positions was now clear to everyone. Mvel was issuing commands from a position he believed was strength. Ji-hun was setting boundaries from a position of unshakable security. He was not being defiant. He was being a captain protecting his ship. On the light of guidance, Mvel was furious. This creature was refusing a direct order. Klarn leaned in, speaking softly, his words not transmitted. Mvel, he is not refusing contact. He is offering another path. Take it. This is not a species you can command. Mvel ignored him. He focused on the massive, shadowy bulk of the choreo behind the human captain's image. It loomed over his beautiful ship, a dark mountain against the stars. The sheer scale of it was an insult to his authority. Your refusal is noted, Captain, Mvel said coldly. It will be included in our report to the Council. Your species application for Galactic Association will be judged accordingly. Jihan almost smiled. Application? Judged? He understood now. This council had expected to meet a beggar at the gate. They had found a neighbor who had built his own castle. We did not apply for anything, Chancellor, Jihan replied, a slight weariness in his tone. We are simply here. We are building our future. If your council wishes to be a part of that conversation, we are listening. But the conversation will be between equals, or it will not happen at all. The silence on the alien bridge was palpable. Clarn closed his eyes, his worst fears confirmed. Vel had tried to exert control and had run into a wall of quiet, immovable confidence. The humans were not aggressive. They were simply solid. They could not be pushed. Before Vel could form a reply that would make things worse, a new alarm blared. But it came from the Light of Guidance's own sensors. The alarm on the Light of Guidance was a sharp, screeching sound. Chancellor Mvela's head snapped toward his sensor officer. On the screen, the massive human ship was forgotten for a moment. Marauder swarm! The officer cried out, its voice tight with fear. Emerging from the nearby asteroid field. Multiple contacts. 50, 60. They are heading for us. On the bridge of the Koryo, Commander Park Sumin saw it too. Her tactical screen lit up with a cloud of small, fast-moving red dots. They poured out of the dark like angry insects. They ignored the Koryo completely, swarming toward the smaller, gleaming council ship. They are attacking the alien vessel, Sumin reported, her voice cool. The swarm pattern is predatory. They are targeting its engine signature. They see it as weak. Captain Li Jihan leaned forward. On the main viewer, he could see the swarm. The individual ships were like twisted metal bugs, sharp and ugly. They began to fire small energy bolts at the Light of Guidance. Bright flashes of light sparkled against the beautiful ship's single shield. Ambassador Valeria gasped. Captain, we must help them. On the alien screen, the image of Chancellor Mvel was still visible. His haughty expression was gone, replaced by frantic urgency. They could hear the translated shouts from his bridge. Evasive pattern. Focus all forward batteries. Where did they come from? The Light of Guidance tried to turn. It fired its elegant energy weapons. A few marauder ships at the edge of the cloud burst into silent fireballs. But there were too many. The swarm closed in, surrounding the ship. The alien vessel's shield glowed brighter and brighter under the constant attack. Warning lights reflected on Vel's face. Their shield is failing, Sumin stated, watching the energy readings drop rapidly. They cannot withstand that volume of fire. They will be shredded in minutes. Dr. Kim Tae-shik's voice came over the bridge speaker from the lab. Captain, the Marauders are a known pestilence in this sector. They are like cosmic piranhas. They prey on lone vessels, the weak or the damaged. They must have been hiding, waiting. Jihan's mind raced. This was not their fight. The council had been arrogant, even hostile. But they were still living beings. He could not watch a ship be destroyed, even a prideful one. He looked at Sumin. We cannot use the main cannon. It would vaporize the alien ship along with the swarm. We need precision. Sumin nodded, her fingers already flying. Point defense array, pattern gamma. It is for shooting down small, fast-moving debris. We can target the individual swarm ships. Do it, Jihan said. But be perfect, Sumin. Not a single shot near the council ship. Understood. She opened the ship-wide comm, all hands. Brace for tactical maneuver. This is a precision defense action. No broad-spectrum weapons. On the Light of Guidance, panic was setting in. A shower of sparks erupted from a console. The shield was at 15%. Chancellor Mvel stared at the main screen, which was now filled with the jagged forms of the Marauders. He could see their crude welding, their grasping claws. This was not a noble end. This was being eaten by scavengers. He looked over, and for a second, his eyes met the image of the human captain on his own screen. The human's face was calm, focused. Then the universe changed. From the dark bulk of the human ship, 100 tiny points of light appeared. They were not the bright beams of energy weapons. They were fast, thin lines of solid metal, moving at a fraction of the speed of light. They looked like needles made of fire. Each line found a marauder ship. There was no explosion. The kinetic projectiles, small but unimaginably dense, simply punched straight through the weak hulls of the swarm ships. One shot, one kill. The Koryo's point defense system fired in a controlled, rhythmic burst. Thump, 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 thump. On the bridge of the Koryo, the sound was a deep vibration in the deck. On the view screen, it was a silent ballet of destruction. The cloud of red dots on the tactical screen began to vanish, one by one, in perfect order. The marauders, mindless in their hunger, did not even react to the threat until half of them were already gone. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. The space around the light of guidance was empty. A few pieces of shattered metal drifted, glittering in the light of the stars. The beautiful council ship was untouched. Not a single human shot had even come close to its hull. Its shield, weak and strained, slowly began to recharge in the sudden, profound silence. On the alien bridge, there was no sound. Chancellor Mvel was frozen, staring at his now clear screens. The terrifying ease of it. The humans had not fought a battle. They had performed an extermination, with a weapon system meant for shooting garbage. He slowly turned back to the communication screen. Captain Lee Ji-hun was looking back at him. "Chancellor," Ji-hun said, his voice the same as before, "it seems your immediate problem is resolved. Are you suffering any damage? Do you require medical or engineering assistance?" The offer was genuine. It was not a boast. It was the question of a neighbor who had just swatted a dangerous wasp nest away from someone's house. Mvel tried to speak. No words came out. The arrogance, the pride, the entire foundation of his worldview had been dismantled in a few seconds. They had not trembled before the human warship. They had been saved by it. And the humans had used the smallest tool in their box. Elder Clarn stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Vela's shoulder. He addressed the screen, his translated voice full of a new, deep respect. "Captain Lee Ji-hun, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you. Our ship is intact. Thanks to your restraint and your precision." Ji-hun gave a small, polite nod. "You are welcome. This region seems more active than we were told. Perhaps we should continue our discussion in a more secure location. Would you care to dock with us? Our shuttles are also available." This time there was no command. There was only an invitation. And after what they had just seen, the offer to go inside that mountain of a ship was the most frightening and sensible thing Clarn had ever heard. We would be honored to send a delegation aboard your vessel, Captain," Clarn said softly. "Thank you." The screen went quiet. On the Koryo's bridge, Ambassador Valeria let out a long breath. Sumin closed her tactical screens. Ji-hun simply looked out at the stars, thinking not of power, but of responsibility. They had shown their teeth without meaning to. Now they had to show their hand, open and hopefully peaceful. The chamber on the Galactic Council's hidden post was silent. The data from the light of guidance had finished streaming in. There were no more arguments, no more prideful shouts. The counselors, represented by their senior members, simply stared at the evidence before them. Elder Clarn was the one to speak into the quiet. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of centuries. "We have reviewed the sensor logs. We have seen the visual record," he said, pulling up the key moment on the main hologram. It showed the marauder swarm, the desperate light of guidance, and the human vessel. "Observe, not the destruction. Observe the method." The playback ran. The 100 precise, kinetic needles lanced out from the human ship. Each one struck a single, small target. The marauder ships died. The council ship was not scratched. "They did not use an area of effect plasma burst," Clarn continued. "They did not use a singularity missile that would have consumed both the swarm and our ship. They used a point defense system, a tool for cleaning small debris. They turned it into a surgical instrument." A counselor from an aquatic species made a bubbling sound of disbelief. "The power required to launch those projectiles at that velocity, It would be immense. And they used it for a scalpel. Exactly, Clarn said, his insectoid head nodding slowly. They possess the power of ancient, wrathful gods. Power to crack planets. But they wield it with the patience and precision of philosophers. They built a mountain, and from that mountain, they can fire a needle through the eye of a needle 100 kilometers away. We have no doctrine for this. We have no psychology for this. Chancellor Mvel, on the screen from the light of guidance, looked diminished. His feathers were flat. They offered aid afterward, he said, and the words seemed to pain him. Medical, engineering. The captain's voice was the same as when I demanded his surrender. Calm. He was not celebrating a victory. He was checking if we needed help after a minor incident. This was perhaps the most frightening part. Not the capability, but the temperament. Another counselor, a slow-moving crystalline being, pulsed with light. Our initial assessment was correct in one way. They are a species shaped by trauma. Their history is one of scarcity, conflict, and existential threat. But we were wrong about the outcome. We thought it made them weak and fractious. Instead, it made them paranoid builders. They do not dream of conquest. They dream of safety. They built a ship that is not a spear. It is a wall so thick and so high that they can finally relax behind it and look out at the universe with curiosity, not fear. Clarn brought up the old schematic of the choreo, highlighting its internal sections. Look at its design. The gardens, the schools, the water reclamation plants, they are at the core the most protected place. The armor, the shields, the weapons, they are all on the outside. They are not an aggressive shell protecting a violent heart. They are a gentle heart protected by an unimaginably strong shell. The weapon is not the purpose. The preservation of life inside is the purpose. The weapon is just a tool for that. The realization settled over the chamber like a cold mist. They had trembled before a warship, but they were truly humbled by a lifeboat designed to survive the end of everything. What is our response? The aquatic counselor asked. We cannot treat them as a guardianship species. The concept is an insult. We must treat them as a peer, Clarn stated firmly. More than a peer in raw power, peer in sovereignty. We must abandon all plans of guidance, of assessment. We must approach them with honesty. We must explain our protocols, our fears. And we must apologize. Vel flinched. Apologize. For the probe. For the arrogant demands. For judging them from the shadows, Clarn said. They know we were watching. They know we tried to command them. Their captain's comm tells me he understands why we did it. But our next move must show that we also understand. We understand that we met not a dangerous child, but a responsible adult who has been through hardships we can scarcely imagine. He looked around the chamber. The galaxy's balance of power is not just shifted. It is rewritten. Not because they will conquer, but because their very existence makes our old way of thinking small. They built a fortress not to attack others, but because they could not imagine the universe being anything but a dangerous place. Our first task is to show them it can also be a friendly one. There were no objections. The data was too clear. The human reaction was too telling. They had witnessed not an act of war, but an act of profound, controlled strength used for protection. It was a type of maturity the Council itself sometimes struggled to show. Then Chancellor Mvel, Clarn said, turning to the screen, you will lead the delegation aboard their vessel. But you will not lead with authority. You will lead with humility. You will go inside their mountain. And you will see the life they protect. That is how we begin. On the screen, Mvel slowly bowed his head. It was not a gesture of his species. It was a human gesture he had seen in their data files. A sign of respect. I understand, he said. I will go. I will see. The meeting ended. The Council, for the first time, was not planning how to manage a new species. They were planning how to introduce themselves properly to a new power. A power that had looked at the cold, dark universe and decided to build a warm, bright, and utterly unbreakable home to sail through it. The trembling had stopped. Now the learning would begin. The shuttle from the light of guidance was a small, elegant thing. It flew slowly into the main hangar bay of the Koryo. The bay was not what Chancellor Mvel expected. It was not a dark, grim metal cave full of weapons. It was brightly lit and very clean. It was also huge. The shuttle looked like a toy inside it. The doors opened. Mvel stepped out, followed by a small group of aides and a silent, watchful Elder Klarn. The air smelled strange. Not of machines or oil but of plants, and a faint scent of food cooking somewhere far away. Captain Lee Ji-hun was there to meet them. He stood straight in his simple blue uniform. Commander Park Soo-min was beside him, her eyes careful. Dr. Kim Tae-shik stood a little to the side, his hands clasped, his face full of an almost painful hope. Chancellor Mvel, Elder Klarn, welcome to the Koryo, Ji-hun said, giving a small, polite bow. Mvel had practiced. He bowed back, the movement still awkward for him. Captain Lee Ji-hun, thank you for your invitation. And thank you again for your assistance. It was the right thing to do, Ji-hun said simply. Please, follow me. He did not lead them to a war room or a strategic command center. He led them through wide corridors. The walls were not bare metal. They were painted in soft colors. There were pictures drawn by children taped to some of them. They passed open doorways. Inside one, a group of people were doing exercises together. In another, an older woman was teaching a class about water recycling to young students. The aliens stared. This was not the inside of a warship. This was the inside of a town. Finally, they entered a large room with a huge window that looked out at the stars. But that was not the main feature. The room was a forest. A real forest. Small trees reached up towards artificial lights that mimicked sunlight. The air was humid and rich with the smell of soil and green leaves. A narrow stream of water trickled over rocks. Among the trees they could see people walking on paths. A child was pointing at a bird in a branch. Dr. Tae-shik stepped forward. His voice was gentle. This is Biome Deck 3, one of 6. We grow 30% of our food here. It also recycles our air and our water. And it is good for the soul. We come from a world where such places became rare. We promised we would not make that mistake again. Mvel was speechless. He looked from the peaceful forest to the massive support beams that held up the high ceiling. He saw the thickness of the outer hull visible at the edges of the window. He understood now. The power, the armor, the guns, they were all there to protect this quiet, growing, living thing. You built all this to travel? Klarn asked, his clicking voice full of wonder. We built this to live, Ji-hun corrected softly. We built this so that if our home planet ever faced disaster, a piece of it would survive. We built this so that we could travel to new homes without being desperate, without being afraid that the first strange thing we met would destroy us. We wanted to meet the universe from a position of peace. But to have that peace, we first needed to be safe. Mvel finally found his voice. It was quiet without its earlier sharpness. Captain, our probe, our demands. We judged you by your shell. We thought the shell was the truth. We were wrong. Ji-hun nodded. We understand fear. We have lived with it for a long time. Your way of watching, we would have done something similar, maybe, if we had been in your place. This forgiveness, this calm understanding, was harder for Mvel to face than anger would have been. Your ship, its power. Soo-min spoke for the first time. The core is not a weapon. It is a battery. It needs to power the lights for the forests, the water pumps for the streams, and the heat for 10,000 people for 100 years. The strength of the hull is to withstand the pressure of a gas giant's atmosphere, or the impact of a small asteroid field, so the people inside can keep living. The precision of our tools is to fix a broken water pipe from a distance, or to clear a path through debris. She paused. Or to remove a threat without hurting an innocent ship next to it. The last piece clicked into place for the aliens. Every terrifying feature of the Titan was, at its heart, a tool for sustaining life. It was the ultimate expression of a species that valued survival above all else. Ji-hun gestured to a simple table near the stream. On it was a pot and some cups. Would you care for some tea? It is made from barley grown here on the ship. It was such a small, human thing. An offer of drink, of hospitality. Inside the strongest fortress the galaxy had ever seen. Vel and Clarn sat. Ji-hun poured the pale yellow tea. The steam rose into the air of the forest. "We have many questions," Clarn said, accepting a cup. "About your history, your hopes, and we have much to tell you about the galaxy. There are wonders, and there are dangers, like the Marauders, though few as impressive as your vessel." Tashik smiled, his old eyes crinkling. "We would like that. We have only had equations for so long. Real answers would be a gift." The conversation began. It was not between a superior and an inferior. It was not between a warden and a prisoner. It was a first true talk between neighbors who had just met over the garden fence. One neighbor had built a very tall, very strong fence. But now the gate was open, and they were sharing tea. Outside the vast window, the stars moved slowly past. The Koryo, humanity's unbreakable lifeboat, sailed on. Inside its armored heart, a small forest grew, and a new friendship slowly took root. The council had trembled. Now they simply listened and learned in the quiet shade of the Titan.